The trail looked like it had been swallowed by the woods, and we were stupid enough to follow it. My buddy, Grant, and I had been planning this backpacking trip for months. We were tired of the crowded, well-maintained trails. We wanted a real challenge, some true solitude. So, we went to an old ranger station and dug through a stack of dusty, forgotten maps. That's when we found it, a trail marked with a faint, hand-drawn line. It wasn't on any of the modern maps. It was just called the Old Ridge Trail, and someone had scrawled a note next to it that said, "Not maintained." That was all the invitation we needed. We started out on a beautiful Saturday morning. The first few miles were tough but exhilarating. We were bushwhacking more than hiking. The trail was almost completely gone, just a faint depression in the dirt. We laughed about it, feeling like two great explorers. We were so caught up in the adventure that we didn't notice when things started to get weird. The first sign was a small, crudely carved wooden arrow nailed to a tree. It pointed straight off the trail, into the thickest part of the woods. It looked old and weathered, like it had been there for years. Grant pointed at it. "Wonder what that's for," he said, a half smile on his face. "Probably some old hunter's marker," I replied, shrugging it off. "Let's keep going." But as we continued, we found more of them. Not just arrows, but strange, handmade signs. One was a piece of tin bent into a crude circle, another was a tangle of sticks tied together with wire. They weren't pointing to anything useful, like a water source or a good campsite. They were just there. Every few hundred yards, another bizarre marker would appear, each one weirder than the last. The feeling of being explorers was slowly being replaced by a nagging sense of unease. By late afternoon, we found a perfect spot for our first night. A small clearing on the ridge, with a view of the valley below. As we were setting up our tents, Grant stumbled on something half buried in the dirt. He dug it out and held it up. It was a doll, a child's doll, but it was old and filthy. Its plastic eyes were gouged out, and its face was smeared with what looked like dried mud. It was just wrong. "What the hell?" Grant muttered, throwing it back into the bushes. "Let's just pretend we didn't see that." But we had seen it. And it had completely changed the mood. The woods didn't feel like a beautiful escape anymore. It felt like a place where things got lost. We started keeping our voices low, the way you do when you don't want to be heard. That night, a feeling of being watched settled over us. I couldn't put my finger on it, but every time I looked up from the campfire, I had the distinct impression of movement just beyond the firelight. I kept telling myself it was just shadows and my imagination. But it was impossible to shake. I slept with my knife tucked under my pillow. The next morning, we decided to get an early start. We were both tired of the oppressive silence and strange discoveries. We were ready to get back on the main trail. That's when we found the second trail. About a mile from our campsite, we came across a split. Our trail went to the left, and a brand new, perfectly cleared trail went to the right. There were no handmade signs, no markers, nothing but a pristine path of beaten down dirt. It looked like someone had been clearing it with a mower. It was impossible. We were miles into a supposedly unmaintained wilderness. We looked at each other, our confusion and fear finally boiling over. Grant pointed at the new trail. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice a little too high. "I think we stick to our trail," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "The one we know." But the new trail was a siren's call. It was a promise of an easy way out. After a few minutes of silent, tense debate, we chose the new trail. It felt like the smartest thing to do. We just needed to get back. We just needed to get out of these woods. The new trail led us down into a valley. We walked for hours, expecting to see signs of civilization at any moment. But we didn't. The trail was endless. The sun started to set, and our hope began to fade. That's when we saw the house. It was a small, ramshackle cabin, half hidden by thick trees. It looked abandoned, with boarded-up windows and a sagging roof. But there was a faint wisp of smoke coming from a chimney, and a small, flickering light in a window that wasn't boarded up. It was the last thing we wanted to see. We didn't want to meet the kind of person who lived this far out in the middle of nowhere. We kept our distance, creeping quietly along the edge of the clearing. But then we saw him. A man, sitting on the porch, rocking in a chair. He was old, with a long, unkempt beard. He was holding something, and as we got closer, we saw what it was. He was whittling. He was carving a small, wooden arrow. The same kind of arrow we had seen pointing off our original trail. My heart was pounding in my chest. We had to get past him. We had to get back to our trail. We dropped into a low crouch and started to inch our way around the clearing, staying behind a line of bushes. That's when I made a terrible mistake. I stepped on a dry stick. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent woods. The old man stopped rocking. He slowly turned his head in our direction. He couldn't see us, but he was looking right at the bushes we were hiding behind. He stood up, and a terrible smile spread across his face. He lifted a hand and waved at us. Not a friendly wave. It was a slow, deliberate wave. A wave that said, "I know you're there. I've been waiting for you." We scrambled back into the woods, not caring about making noise anymore. We ran as fast as our legs could carry us, back the way we had come. We ran past the trail, past the cabin, past all the strange, handmade signs. We didn't stop until we got back to our original trail. We ran for another 2 hours, not caring about the sun setting. We just ran. We finally made it back to our car just as the last of the light faded. We piled in, shaking and breathing hard, and got the hell out of there. We didn't say a word to each other until we were miles down the highway. Grant was the first one to speak. "I think we followed his trail," he said, his voice a whisper. I knew he was right. We had fallen for a trap. That new, clear trail was a decoy, a way to lead us right to his doorstep. The old, forgotten trail was the way out. To this day, I still think about that old man. I wonder how many people have followed his trail. And I wonder if they ever made it back. I never went backpacking again, and I never will. I'll never go into the woods without a clear path, because some trails are made to lead you nowhere. Some trails are meant to be forgotten. And some people in the woods want to make sure you stay lost forever.